All right, everybody, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Awesome. Well, today we are looking at something pretty interesting. It's former President Trump's 2025 calendar.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So specifically, we're going to be taking a look at what he has publicly planned for the first few months of the year.
I'm intrigued.
Yeah. And, our primary source for this deep dive is this article we found. It's called Trump's 2025 Travel, Mar-a-Lago, Wildfire Relief, and Engagements.
Still cute.
And, it really does seem like he has quite the eclectic mix of activities planned.
Yeah, I was looking this over, and it's interesting. There's some leisure activities, some national engagements.
Yeah, so it's kind of all over the place. In 1 minute, it sounds like he's kicking back at his Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida.
Right.
Which he keeps calling his winter White House, by the way.
Of course, of course.
And then the next thing you know, he's like on a wildfire relief tour.
Yeah, that is interesting. It's an interesting contrast.
Yeah, well, what do you make of that?
Well, I think Mar-a-Lago is more than just a vacation spot for the former president.
Okay.
As the article kind of lays out, I think it's become like a hub for political meetings and events.
Oh, so it's like a secondary center of power.
Yeah, almost. Think about all the conversations that must be happening behind those closed doors,
Right.
Outside the traditional political circles.
That's fascinating. And then, like I mentioned, there's the wildfire relief trip to California.
Yeah.
And the article is careful to point out that this was actually planned way in advance.
Interesting.
Yeah. So what do you think that tells us?
Well, it might indicate, a genuine commitment to disaster relief.
Okay.
Think about it, It's pretty common for presidents, even former presidents, to visit disaster areas.
Right.
It shows support, it raises awareness, and it can even be used to push for certain policies.
Right. I can definitely see that.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. But then we go from wildfires to
Super Bowl.
Super Bowl. The article mentions he attended Super Bowl LIX in New Orleans.
Of course.
Yeah, big national event.
Huge.
Yeah, and then after that, he goes on to give a speech at CPAC. That's the Conservative Political Action Conference in National Harbor.
Right. These are two very different types of events.
They really are, yeah.
Attending a massive sporting event like the Super Bowl, it's all about visibility. It lets him connect with a huge audience and a very diverse audience.
Okay, yeah.
But CPAC, that's a much more targeted approach. That's about solidifying his connection with his base. Those core voters who identify with the conservative movement and its values.
So it's like this two-pronged approach, reaching out to the general public on one hand, and then really shoring up support with his core supporters on the other.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. And this kind of makes me wonder what he has planned next, because the article mentions that his schedule for April and May is still taking shape.
Well, he's got to keep us guessing.
He sure does. Mm-hmm. So any predictions for those months based on what we've seen so far?
Well, if I had to guess, I'd say we're probably going to see more public appearances.
Okay.
More conferences, maybe even some international trips.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, he's been relatively quiet on the world stage since leaving office, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him, maybe try to make a splash there as well.
Yeah, all right. So, taking all of this together, this mix of leisure, national engagements, political maneuvering, what's the takeaway here? What does it tell us about the former president?
Well, I think it tells us that even though he's out of office, Trump is still very much engaged.
Right.
He's clearly maintaining his presence on the national stage. He's playing to different audiences and he's cultivating his image.
Yeah.
It's a very deliberate approach.
It really is. It's a fascinating blend of activities, that's for sure. And it definitely leaves us with some questions.
Yeah.
Big questions.
What does this all mean?
Yeah, what does this mix of activities tell us about his future aspirations?
Right.
Is he content with being a political influencer? Or is he maybe laying the groundwork for something more?
Yeah. What do you think? What's your take?
Well, it's definitely something to think about and ponder over. But, whatever his plans are, one thing's for sure. Trump knows how to stay in the spotlight.
He does.
And I have a feeling we'll be hearing a lot more from him in the coming months and years.
Oh, absolutely.
All right, well, thanks for joining me for another deep dive.
My pleasure.
And we'll see you all next time.
See you then.
Bye.